I'm Jess Carell, and I'm a banker of sorts.
I'm Angela Carell, and I'm a novelist and also a small business owner here in Stanford, Kentucky. We're both seventh-generation Kentuckians, and we love it. Our families are here, and so for us, God put us here for a reason, and we want to, live out what we feel like we're called to do in this place.
I read a Tim Keller study. He was talking about when the Israelites were in Babylon, they didn't just pray for the good of the Israelites, but also for the good of the city. We try to think what's good for our city and then try to be part of that solution. I think we have to start at home with the folks that we work with.
Here in Stanford, we have a few small businesses that we started. One of them is called Kentucky Soaps and Such, and it really has been kind of a fun thing to see that evolve from just making soap in my kitchen to now this store. We have basically a little factory in the basement, and we do all kinds of other things as well.
We always wanted a restaurant and felt like that kind of was the soul of a town. And so we decided a little over 3 years ago, to start a farm-to-table restaurant.
Another business that we have is called the Wilderness Road Guest Houses and Rooms, and that kind of extended from our desire to provide hospitality for people when they came into Stanford. We really think about our businesses downtown in light of three things in particular, and one is excellence. We feel like that anything less is not a good reflection of our Creator. The other thing we like to think about is stewardship, and it's not really about money. It's much deeper than that. It's stewardship of our bodies, stewardship of the land, stewardship of the local economy. The third thing that we talk a lot about is hospitality.
The whole idea of hospitality and making people feel like they're home and just different, I think that it has been part of our vision.
We just really see it all as a way to love people. That's the bottom line.
If you're nice to people and hospitable, we found that when you do business that way, it's something that will suit your economics teacher and your Sunday school teacher. We just try to run our businesses in a unique way to care for people, live by principles that we got out of a really old book. We're not successful all the time at it, but we hope that people will experience that when they come to our town.
We believe that hyper-focus in any area can change it. And so we just decided to stay here. So we have a real estate company that has over 100 pieces of property, primarily locally, within 10 blocks of this where we're sitting right now. From that, developed our construction company because we actually couldn't afford to hire other contractors.
Now we're a historic renovation business.
And out of that came our architectural salvage business.
We're a restaurant group with multiple restaurants. We have a consulting company that's my primary focus, which is helping people restore cities. We call ourselves Marsh Collective now because I've tried to find a way to bring together multiple companies, multiple entities, multiple ownerships into a singular way to communicate.
What I believe we're trying to accomplish is community in the truest sense. Literally, your neighbors are leaning up against the fence talking to each other, like trusting each other, having hard conversations, but understanding that those hard conversations don't bring differences. They bring understanding.
And we're going in and helping people in towns from 800 all the way to 80,000 people turn their towns around and make them amazing places. Yeah, just frame it back. What we realized is that when it comes to saving communities, the capital it takes to do that is in three ways. It's patient capital, it's properly aligned capital, and then it's also productive capital. Yeah, let's do that then.
Okay, so
we'll tear this off.
these two doors.
Okay. And so when we say patient capital, they have to understand it's 3 to 5 years, 7 years sometimes at the outside for it to really begin to be the kind of investment that investors are used to oftentimes. Properly aligned, people have to have vision and values. The vision means they want it to be saved. The values is that they want to make a generational difference. And then last, the productive part. We think cities should have return of your capital and then return on your capital. Because what happens is we've seen cities where people try to build them only through benevolence, and what we found out is that's not a sustainable model. But we knew this, if we could build things that were sustainable, profitable, and thoughtful, that they could have a very long life. And so we dream 50, 75, and 100 years for our city, and then we help others dream that for theirs.
Hi, thanks guys. My name is Jason Roberts. I'm from Oak Cliff, Texas, which is in Dallas. It's always been considered kind of the bad part of town. Lived there with my wife about 10 years ago. This is a picture of me and my community, what kind of I'm known for. I'm called the bike guy or the alternative transportation guy. Our city has not been very active about promoting things like bicycling and walking, so I've learned to take it on myself. So where did all this start? My wife and I went to Europe about 10 years ago. And I'd go to these great plazas like in Italy, and I'd see these amazing, beautiful fountains and these places where old people could linger with their grandchildren, and these great markets that were buzzing with life and with energy. And then I'd go to places like in the north and see in Scandinavia, these beautiful old buildings with these small little shops everywhere and these little streets and people riding their bicycles everywhere. And then I came back to Dallas and I thought, well, where are we building? What's going to be our legacy? What's going to be our thing that lasts 1,000 years like these things? When I got back home, I saw this stuff. And I remember thinking, wow, where can I put my cafe table? Like, where can I have like my bicycle ride with my grandchild someday? So this is like our aqueducts. This is what we're passing on for 1,000 years. This is what we're saying this is our priority as our city. So my first step, I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to get involved. I'm going to start meeting people in my community. I'm going to go to those local organizations like the Chambers and the Lions Clubs and all those things. And when you walk into a room and you see a bunch of people that look like this, the thing, you think, I don't belong here. These aren't my people. This is not, But the thing is, that's the worst thing you can do, because these are actually the doers. These are the guys that are showing up. These are the guys that come out and want to make things better. They are looking for leaders and people to take on charges so they can stand behind. So don't walk away from these folks. You need these. So within my community, I thought, okay, what can I start on? I want to fix something. I want to help something. We had this old theater that was beautiful, but it was falling apart. It was the Texas Theater. It's over on Jefferson Boulevard, and it was boarded up. It's kind of well known because this is where Lee Harvey Oswald was captured in '63. So I thought, why don't I take this theater and see if I can do something with it? I brought some friends together and I said, let's do a giant art show inside. And we created all these little easels, and again, it had been boarded up for 10 years or so. Nobody had come in, dusty, falling apart. The sign was falling apart. And we said, I got some friends that were artists. I'm in a band as well, so I've been in music and things like that. So I brought my friends together and said, let's bring out 100 of our friends, and we'll just paint these easels, and we'll sell them all the next day. So a few minutes before we're about to open the door to this, we're thinking, what are we, crazy? This is nuts. This is in the bad part of town. It was winter at the time, and it's an old theater that people don't ever think to go to. This is going to be an abject failure. We put all this money on our credit cards. What were we thinking? But when we opened the doors, we had 700 people show up. And at that point, people came out and said, we love this. This is great. We were waiting for someone to fix this space, and we're so glad you did this. So at that point, we learned, wow, if somebody just stands up and takes an initiative and starts just giving people an idea to change the perception of a place, it makes a huge difference. So drunk with excitement and enthusiasm and thinking, wow, if I can do that, what else can I do? I went to my local library and looked at the map of my community. I saw I had all these old buildings that were falling apart within my community, and I tried to figure out, well, where were these buildings and how do they relate to the neighborhood? And I noticed they were they were all attached to the streetcar line. We used to have a streetcar like 70 years ago or 50 years ago. So that night I went home and I created a website called the Oak Cliff Transit Authority. I had nice maps. I had news sections and newsletters because I knew how to build websites, so I could do that. Now again, it was just me, but within like a week, the local newspaper picked up the story. And it's funny, it says, dreaming of the day the streetcars return. Oak Cliff's future could very well be tied to a trip to the past. That's what Jason Roberts and other members of the recently formed Oak Cliff Transit Authority are hoping. There were no other members. But the cool thing about this was that people in my community who had been used to being the bad part of town were like, wow, we've got a streetcar group? This is awesome. I want to take part. And I had like engineers that were legit started calling me. I had people that love streetcars that started calling. And at that point I said, well, let's create an official board. So we created a board, and it was legitimate, and we started our kind of our nonprofit movement with that. If you're passionate about something, you're probably going to be a leader, because just that passion is going to be broadcast within the community, and people are going to want to get behind you. So take that charge and run with it. Okay, so now we're doing streetcars. I got bicycles. I got old theaters. Instead of just doing a theater, I got a whole block here that's been abandoned or been boarded up. And when I looked at it, I tried to figure out, well, what's holding this block back? And what I found was, okay, in the 70s, this used to be the streetcar stop as well. They turned it into a one-way street and widened it. They thinned the sidewalks. They created these zoning rules and things like that apparently been on for like 70 years or so, that showed, these things that were, basically crippling the potential for this to be the little neighborhood gathering spot. You couldn't do a lot of things you wanted to do. So I started looking at all the ordinances that weren't allowed, or that were cost prohibitive. Like to put flowers on the sidewalk, it was $1,000, and to do cafe seating was $1,000 times area market value times 85% times 12%. And then we had crowds weren't allowed to gather. You couldn't have awnings and arcades, and it gets really hot in Dallas. It gets hot here too. Use of sidewalks to display merchandise, so we couldn't do fruit stands. We couldn't do all those things. So we looked at this block. I thought, well, obviously, we're not allowed to do any of this stuff that would make this really cool. So what would happen if we tried to break every law we possibly could over a weekend? So we did. We painted our own bike lanes. We brought in cafe seating. We brought in this whole historic lights and things like that. We brought in flowers, and then we started printing up all the rules we were breaking. We put them on the windows, and we invited the city staff and the council members out and said, come to our party, and they didn't know what we were doing. They're like, oh, this is great, I love this. And then they're like, oh, we're not supposed to be here. But what happened was this became so powerful for the community and then for the city leadership to see this. And they came back and they said, we don't know why these rules have been on the books for so years. We should change these things. So a lot of the issues we're faced with, and I think this happens across the nation, we're basically hamstrung by a series of rules that were put in place years ago that we don't even know why we're doing. We just keep doing it. We created a bunch of pop-up businesses as well in those vacant spaces. We went in and we created a coffee shop. We went into an old garage. We turned it into a kids' art studio. We created flower markets. What happened after this project, too, was really cool, we didn't expect, was one of the shops became permanent. It was so loved by the community that it's become an art studio. They offer kids classes during the days. At night, they do adult classes, so I can learn how to brew beer and cool things like that. So it's been a fixture. It's now an anchor to the area. This would have never happened. I think the hurdles to starting business now are so high in people's minds. These ideas of I've got to create pro formas, and I got to get all these long insurances, these permits. It's going to take years. It's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm going to give up. Our idea was hey, let's just do it on a weekend. As a community, we'll help fix the stage. You just do your art and let us help you. And what we found is when people actually get a chance just to focus on what they love and the community helps them, it can stay and they'll figure out all the rest later on. Concrete. So we took the street and we brought 42 trees and we brought 100 bushes to create pedestrian islands. We got some old pallets and we made decks. We did the pop-up shops again. We created places for people to linger. We took those poles and we just put bicycles on it because remember now we're the bike part of town. That's what we told everybody. And they believed it. And that's the cool thing is people now are moved to the area because they're like, this is the bike part of town. So it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy. We created our own crosswalks. You're not supposed to do that. But then we went in and we brought in tables and chairs in the parking space and places to linger. And we couldn't get people out of here. That was the problem. It was 100 degrees. And as long as people have a great place that they love, they're going to come out. And you're actually going to have a hard time kind of kicking them out. In our community, we had rendering fatigue. We'd seen all these architects that had sort of these designs of how cool things would be. And they'd plug in trees and they'd Photoshop people. But these are real people. They're not Photoshopped. And these are real bicycles and real trees. And that's a real pole that has something on it now. So I had another group that had a dog park they've been trying trying to work on for like a year. And they've been talking to the council member. The council member said, I talked to the city officials, city staff, and they said that it has to be on 30 acres to do a dog park, which means it's going to have to be far away from our community. It's going to take us, millions of dollars. And they came to me and asked me, well, what would you do in this scenario? And we're standing across this field that people were dumping on. And I said, well, why don't we make that into a dog park? And they're like, okay. We could do that. Like, it's in the neighborhood. It's small. We could prove that we can do a small dog park. And they're like, okay, we'll do some fundraisers. We'll raise some money. We'll do some community like pledge drives and things like that. It might take us 8 or 9 months and all. Is that what you're thinking? I'm like, no, let's do it next weekend. So we did. We basically found a bunch of trees that had fallen down from a storm, so we mulched our own trees. We made the official Dallas Park sign ourselves for our Pop-Up Pooch Park. We made swings for kids because we found it's important whenever you create great public spaces to have things for 8 and 80-year-olds. My friend had goats, so we brought his goat fencing out. And so now this dog park is going to be installed permanently. It's going to be another area from this, but just not far from this. So this project really kind of opened the eyes of the community and the city to see maybe we were doing things wrong. Okay, now the Better Block, this thing we did a year and a half ago, it's going all over the country. So we've been kind of blown away by that part. That's something we didn't expect because we were just trying to fix our own community. And I've been flying all over, which has been surreal for somebody who wasn't in the world of consulting and things like that, to actually get to talk to people about these things. This is what's been amazing about this. And we're getting to do projects. I'm working on a project in San Antonio right now, and Wichita, and New York did one. A lot of communities, we kind of open sourced it, treat it like Linux. You guys do it yourself. If you want us to help, we'll help as well. So my little band of streetcar group at the beginning, we were out and we started studying all these other cities, and it was like 5 of us, and this is us in Portland meeting with officials, and we told the city, we heard about these grants that are coming around to try to build infrastructure in certain cities to help, like stimulus grants, and they're like, yeah, whatever, Oak Cliff, go ahead, you apply for those grants. And we're like, okay, we will, and we'll see what happens. And what happened was we won a grant. We're bringing the streetcar back to Oak Cliff. $23 million. We're coming back. All I did was create a website. So that's what I remind people, remember, that's how these things start. You don't have to have everything worked out. So kind of want to step you through really what we need to do in order to make things happen, what I found. First and foremost, show up. If you don't show up, she will. And she's against everything. Yeah. So, and the thing is, nobody shows up. You learn that real fast. It's like 5 or 6 people. It's always the same people. So if you just keep showing up, like that guy keeps showing up, and you're the guy that's saying, I'm going to bring the streetcar back, it's probably going to work because nobody else is doing anything. That also means be present. Be there for your community. Figure out a way that you can make things better. We all have skills we can bring to the table. Next thing we found is give it a name. Just naming something. That simple thing creates an identity and builds pride in something. So we created our Art Conspiracy and our Bike Friendly Oak Cliff and Oak Cliff Transit Authority. We made fancy logos. And there was one guy who had this cluster of buildings in our community, and he just decided to call them the Bishop Arts District. And it's become kind of the Renaissance turnaround area because everyone's like, wow, we got a place called the Bishop Arts District. So that's why I always tell people, just name whatever it is you're doing. And then lastly, set a date and publish it. And I call it blackmail yourself. This is what I do all the time. I won't even know more than 10% of what we're going to do for a Better Block project, but I have the poster ready, and I've got my friends on board, and then we publish it and say, we're going to do a Better Block, and everyone's like, oh no, we're doing it in 60 days too, so we have to commit. And we always like to do short time frames to commit to these things, because if we don't, we tend to want to back out. We'll talk ourselves out of why we shouldn't do these things or why it's going to be a problem. So I like to get everybody on the hook. So that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much.
There's a model that could help so many communities for cities that are just dying. People that remembered it having life in it and want their children to experience that. We're the ones that come up beside them, grab them by their arms and walk with them.
I want to leave a legacy on the hearts of men and not just sticks and bricks. I want to make a difference that's eternal. For people's children are changed. And I know that I can take these dollars I touch and influence lives. We invest in people and places. That's what we do. And we see things with a redemptive mindset.